everybody. So today we are going to be discussing the impact of COVID-19 on college students' mental health and their social involvement. I'm Anthony Giroux.
I'm Elle Hiley.
I'm Jackson Cardoni.
I'm Lexi Kim.
I'm Kevin Dinzig.
Just to give you guys a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about today is our table of contents. So starting out a little bit about our stated problem and research question, and then we'll be moving on into our introductory slides, where you can, sorry, I cannot see this. And then after that, we're moving into our first hypothesis, and then going into a little bit about the research and development that led to that, and then doing the same for the second hypothesis. That will be followed by our survey idea, which is just a general idea of our survey, followed by the survey plan, which goes a little bit more in depth on the actual survey itself and how we kind of plan that out. That will be followed by a descriptive table, which talks about the gender, race, year college students started their college career, and then whether or not they lived on or off campus. And then we will be including that with a regression analysis that kind of goes over what we found in our survey.
So to start, we're going to talk about our stated problem and research question. So for our stated problem, we wanted to determine what was the issue overall that we wanted to look at. And we found that we wanted to look into if there's a decrease in mental health and social involvement among college students caused by COVID-19. For our research question, we wanted to dig into what we were actually going to look at, and that was how COVID-19 affected the social involvement and mental health of a typical college student on campus.
So for our introduction, there are just some things that we wanted to reiterate on how COVID affected colleges and college students. So COVID-19 pandemic showed dramatic social effects on students' lives, on campuses due to isolation across the United States. Being social and connecting with others is a crucial part of the typical college experience, and students were surprised with this during the pandemic, and this caused them to experience mental exhaustion and loneliness. Students already experienced overwhelming stress balancing school, work, and social lives before the pandemic, and the pandemic starting only caused this to increase for them. Being faced with isolation, fear of pandemic, and the new online format of classes, mental health cases increased dramatically, and students continue to experience feelings of loneliness and depression and anxiety today related to the effects of COVID. So COVID-19's effects of universities started in spring 2020 when COVID disrupted typical schedules of colleges, with more than 1,300 colleges throughout the United States canceling in-person classes, with some going online. And then in the fall of 2020, universities began to develop plans that would merge in-person classes with social distancing and online classes. According to statistics from the College Crisis Initiative, 44% of universities went fully or primarily online, 21% used a hybrid model, and 27% were fully or primarily in person. In spring of 2021, many institutions expanded in-person instruction using contact tracing and testing to attempt to reduce the spread of COVID. Many schools planned to cancel spring break, and this prompted concerns over mental health and academic success with students. Since the pandemic, there has been concerns over college enrollment due to the restrictions on campus visits and admissions testings that was disrupted in the spring of 2020 with the start of COVID again. During this time, over 300 schools extended their admissions deadlines in hopes of giving students time to decide what they were going to do, and many schools, including Northern, waived their ACT and SAT requirements. Still, freshman enrollment for fall of 2020 declined by an unprecedented amount, and we have a little pop quiz to see if you remember. How much do you think it declined? C? It was B, 13.1%, close. So colleges have had some attempts to combat these issues. Some have suggested many solutions. In our example, we used Boston University, and they used a FY 101 course for first-year students to help them interact with other students, as well as hosted festivals and game nights, and they also hosted smaller events to help more socially inept students interact with each other. But these things only work if students want to get to know people and want to socially interact, and with all the changes in COVID, a lot of students are having troubles getting back into the swing of things.
So jumping into our first hypothesis, we determined that if college students increase their extracurricular activity, then their mental health will improve. So a quick question, what do you think the best way to improve your mental health and self-esteem is? Your options are sleeping, eating healthy, resting, and being active.
Sleeping.
Yes.
Oh, got a like big mix here, but the answer would be D, being active. So we wanted to look at what factors went into extracurriculars and how that affected mental health. So we started with mental health and kind of worked our way up from there. According to Northern Illinois University, they had a particular club that had a decrease of 56%. While one club might not seem like a lot, this was a big trend along many universities as well as different extracurricular activities. For our second piece, we had a University of McMaster's of Ontario, Canada, and they did a study based on extracurricular activities. It was of 786 students, and what they determined was the extracurricular activities help facilitate problem solving, self-expression, and improving adaptability. So moving on from there, we decided that we wanted to look a little bit more into being active, as the last question stated. And according to the Mental Health Organization, it's shown that being active increases chemicals in your body that prove to improve self-esteem, confidence, sleeping, as well as your overall mental health. Seeing as that being active and engaging with others helps improve your mental health overall.
Next, we're going to go on to our second hypothesis, which is if college students have increased their isolation, then their mental health will decrease. So, socializing is good for the mind and body. Our brain basically controls every aspect of our body, from sociological to cognitive abilities. The slide mentions that social motivation, social contact can help improve memory formation, recall, and protect the brain from neurodegenerative diseases. One thing I want to mention and highlight on this is that the memory formation, that social contact can really help memory formation, which I will mention later on. COVID-19 affects all. After experiencing lockdown, social distancing, and isolation, there's a worldwide effect of increased mental health issues. Psychology Today actually uses an experiment on a monkey that was in partial, or monkeys that were in partial and total isolation. The ones that were in total isolation were hostile and they were unable to form proper social attachments. So post-isolation, neurobrain image scanning was conducted on both humans and monkeys. They found two parts of the brain were crucially impacted. The prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, which the amygdala explains the hostility because there's a fear component there, and then slightly in the hippocampus, which we notice that with social contact, that helps improve memory formation, and then we see with the hippocampus, it is damaged post-isolation.
Okay, this is going a little bit into our overall idea for our survey, just the general idea. So we decided that the best dependent variable to use was just mental health post-COVID-19. Originally, we kind of thought doing pre and post for comparison, but then with what we kind of researched and what we thought of, we thought that mental health post-COVID-19 was a more suitable dependent variable. Followed by our independent variables, which are extracurricular activities post-COVID-19 amongst college students, isolation during COVID-19, and then as well as university satisfaction. I should point out also all of those are, or I should say were measured on a 0 to 10 scale, 0 being the least, 5 being in the middle, kind of no opinion, and then 10 being the most.
Moving on to our survey plan. So our goal within this study is to provide statistical data to further test our hypotheses relating to the impact of COVID-19 on college students, mental health, and social involvement. When creating our survey, we wanted to keep it short and sweet, approximately taking around 5 minutes to fully complete. We asked 14 questions related to mental health, satisfaction, and social involvement, as well as 5 demographic questions, including gender, race, location, living situation, and education. Prior to taking the survey, we had a fully descriptive introduction stating who we are and asking or providing information on why we are asking the participants to take the survey. The survey is fully anonymous, protecting all privacy of all participants. And towards the end of the introduction, we state our contact information in case there's any questions or concerns. Our target population was college students throughout the U.S., and we received a total of 158 completed surveys. Our methods that we utilized was convenient sampling and chain referral sampling. And we collected the data using an online QR code, promoting it on social platforms such as email, messaging apps, Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat, as well as, as well as in-person contact through visitor locations such as Jamrich, the library, and just asking anyone and everyone that we know, and asking them to pass it on to their friends and family. So the descriptive analysis shows who our main population is, found through our demographic asked questions. So our gender analysis is mostly evenly divided, yet there's more information on the female population with a frequency of 54.73% compared to the male population with a 45.27%. Moving on to the race analysis, most of our participants were white with a frequency of 87.34%. And then, since our purpose of this study was to analyze students who experienced college during COVID-19, therefore 43.2% of our participants started college the year 2019, which is the year that COVID-19 began. There is some bias though generally because of our participants who started college and they had different interactions and experiences pre versus post-COVID. And then our living situation analysis concluded that 57.2% of our participants lived off campus on their own or with a roommate, following close behind the population of on campus with 33.10%.
Next, we're going to go into our analysis, going over the survey and our results. So why we use multiple regression is because we have continuous variables, we have more than one independent variable, and our VIF checked out at 1.000, which you will see later on, and that's less than 10. So we were able to use this. So our findings basically are concluded in that first equation there. Our R squared was 0.139, which is a 13.9% variability. And then we have mental health being our Y equals 6.248, which is our constant coefficient, plus 0.252, which is a positive correlation between mental health and extracurricular activities, minus 0.295, which is a negative correlation between mental health and isolation. So here's just where we got the numbers for the first equation. And then if you go to the next slide, you can see where we got them for the second equation.
So what does our research really show? As Elle briefly talked about, this research shows that both extracurricular activities and isolation affect our dependent variable of mental health. Mental health and extracurricular activities are correlated positively with an increase in extracurricular activities post-COVID-19 correlating with an increased mental health post-COVID-19, and our independent variable of isolation during the pandemic is correlated negatively with our dependent variable of mental health, with isolation increasing during the pandemic correlating with a decreased mental health during the pandemic. So what should universities do to solve this problem? So based on our research, the main things that universities should be doing is finding ways to decrease students' isolation while increasing their participation in extracurricular activities. Some specific ways that universities can do this, as shown earlier with the Boston University example, is to create FY 101 courses for freshman students, host events for students to socialize with each other, and incentivize the students to join extracurricular activities.
And then just to kind of briefly, again, wrap it all up and go into a conclusion, our stated problem was that decrease in mental health and social involvement amongst college students caused by COVID-19. Our first hypothesis, if college students increase their extracurricular activities, their mental health will improve. And our second hypothesis, if college students increase their isolation, then their mental health will decrease. Independent variable being that mental health post-COVID-19, with our dependent variables being extracurricular activities, isolation, and satisfaction. And then again, just to kind of briefly sum up our findings, is that we found mental health had a positive correlation with extracurricular activities and a negative correlation overall with isolation.